Hi guys, I'm Shera Bongadillo and I'm here to give you a summary about the chapter 2 in Cisco networking. So first we have the 2.1 means iOS boot bootcamp. So in here we have the Cisco iOS, the Cisco accessing iOS device and navigating the iOS and the command structure. So it is said that all end devices and network devices connected to the internet require an operating system or OS to help them perform their function. The portion of the OS code that interacts directly with the computer hardware is known as the kernel. Uh, the most common methods to access the CLI are console, number 2 is telnet or SSH, and the last one is AUX port or AUX port. The portion that interfaces with applications and users is known as the shell. The user can interact with the shell using either the command line interface or CLI or graphical user interface or GUI. There are many distinct variations of Cisco iOS 4. Switches, routers, and other Cisco networking devices. Numbered versions for a given Cisco networking device. Feature sets providing distinct packages. In hierarchical order, from most basic to most specialized, the major modes are user exec mode, privilege mode, privilege exec mode, global configuration, and interface configuration. The two primary modes of operations are user exec mode and privilege exec mode. As a security feature, the Cisco iOS software separates the exec sessions into two levels of access: global configuration mode and interface configuration mode can only be reached from the privilege exec mode. GUIs may not always be able to provide all of the features available at the CLI. GUIs can also fail, crash, or simply not operate as specified. For these some reasons, network devices are typically accessed through a CLI. The CLI is less resource intensive and very stable when compared to GUI. The network operating system used in Cisco devices is called the Cisco Internetwork Operating System, or iOS. Cisco iOS is used for most Cisco devices regardless of the type of the size of the device. Note that the operating system on home routers is usually called firmware. The most common method for configuring a home router is using a web browser-based GUI. The advantage of using a console port is that the device is accessible even if no networking services has been configured, such as when performing an initial configuration of the network devices. When performing an initial configuration, a computer running terminal emulation software is connected to the console port of the devices using a special cable. Configuration commands for setting up to the switch or router can be entered on the connected computer. What is SSH? SSH is the recommended method for remote management because it provides a secure connection. SSH provides encrypted password, authentication, and transport of the session data. This keeps the user ID, password, and details of the management session private. Most versions of Cisco iOS include SSH server and SSH client that can be used to establish SSH sessions with other devices. What is Telnet? Um, Best practices dictates to you to use SSH instead of Telnet for remote management CLI connections. Cisco iOS includes a Telnet server and a Telnet client that can be used to establish Telnet sessions with other devices. So what's the difference between the user exec mode and user privilege mode? Rather privilege exec mode. So the difference between the two of that is user exec mode has limited capabilities, but it is useful for basic. As I said, user exec mode allows only a limited number of basic monitoring commands but does not allow the executions of any commands that might change the configuration of the device. The user exec mode is identified by the CLI prompt that ends with the less than symbol, while the privilege exec mode execute configuration commands. A network administrator must access privilege exec mode. Higher configuration modes, like global configuration mode, can only be reached from privilege exec mode. The privilege exec mode can be identified by the prompt ending ending with the hashtag symbol. To configure the devices, the user must enter global configuration mode, which is commonly called global config mode. From global config mode, CLI configuration changes are made that affect the operation of changes are made that affect of the operation the device as a whole. Global configuration mode is identified by a prompt that ends with the hashtag config, or rather config hashtag, after the device name, such as switch, open and close parenthesis, config, and then the outside of the parenthesis, we will put the hashtag symbol. Global configuration mode is accessed before other specific configuration modes. From global config mode, the user can enter different sub-configuration modes. Each of these modes allows the configuration of a particular part of functions of the iOS device. Two common sub-configuration modes include line configuration mode. Line configuration mode used to configure console, SSH, telnet, or AUX access. The other one is the interface configuration mode, used to configure a switch port or router network interface. When using the CLI, the mode is identified by the command line prompt that is unique to that mode. By default, every prompt begins with the device's name. Following the name, the remainder of the prompt indicates the mode. For example, the default prompt of for line configuration mode switch config -line hashtag sign, and the default prompt for interface configuration mode is switch config -if and then hashtag symbol. Host names appear in CLI prompts and should be used on topology diagrams. Host names are configured on the active network devices, start with a letter, contains no spaces, end with a letter or digit, use only letters, digits, and dashes, and be less than 64 characters in length. Passwords are primary defense against unauthorized access to network devices. iOS uses hierarchical modes to help with device security. As part of the security environment, the service passwords encryption can then be executed and then encryption will be applied onto the passwords. Removing the encryption services doesn't reverse the encryption. The startup configuration file is stored in the NVRAM. Running configuration file reflects the current configuration applied to a Cisco iOS device. It contains commands used to determine how the device operates on the network. Startup configuration file reflects the configuration that will be used by the device upon reboot. A configuration file can be copied from storage to a device. When copied into the terminal, the iOS executes each line of the configuration text as a command. IP address together with subnet mask uniquely identifies end devices on the internet network. Subnet mask determines which part of a larger network is used by an IP address. Differences between various types of media include distance the media can successfully carry a signal, environment in which the media is to be installed, amount of data and the speed at which it must be transmitted, cost of the media and the installation.